Robin objected to the high taxes and rebelled. He was declared an outlaw. He became known as the man who stole from the rich to give to the poor.
This is my favorite time of year. I love this. This is the last time I'll be doing it as mayor, but I did it last year for the first time as being mayor. But for the 20 years, this is the most awesome time. I just love this time of year. So, and I'm going to wear something special this year at the Robin Hood Festival. So we're thinking, we're thinking. We'll come up with something though, so we can all be in theme this year. Great. Yeah, I really appreciate girls going to all this trouble to do this too. And thank you. And I'll see you. I think next week at council or something. Next week? 2 weeks. I'll see you at city council. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. Like Bill was saying, we're sure this is a great time of year. Tonight's the official kickoff for the 2014 Robin Hood Festival. This is our 60th anniversary of the festival. So it's a long tradition. We got people on our board that have been with the festival, 2 people, nearly 40 years, 60. We got a lot of traditions.
Other people say hurrah when they see something wonderful happening. We say it the old medieval way. We say it with a Z instead of an R. So it's a huzzah. We might give it a try. Hip hip huzzah! Hip hip huzzah! Hip hip huzzah! For Robin Hood, champion of the poor. Now, one thing I've always felt a little bad about it, they don't say Robin Hood and Maid Marian. This should be, I think, the Robin Hood and Maid Marian Festival, but nobody agrees with me, so I decided to make my case here tonight. I wanted to tell you something about the magnificent ladies of the Middle Ages and how interesting they were. The queens of England would ride out to battle with their husbands, and they would help them run the war. One lady was, I think she was 8 months pregnant with her seventh kid, but it didn't matter. She was coming along anyway. These ladies were tough. Did you know that the last person to conquer England was a woman? Most people, that's never taught in history. Hitler tried it, he couldn't do it. Napoleon tried it, he couldn't do it. But Queen Isabella did it. She didn't like her husband, the King Edward II, so she went to France and hitched up with one of her boyfriends, who was a forest baron who had been arguing with the king. He was kind of a Robin Hood type. And in fact, everything in England reminds you of Maid Marian and Robin Hood. It's like going to Las Vegas looking for elves. It's everywhere. And the history of England is just full of stuff that reminds you of Marian and Robin. And so anyway, she goes over there and she meets up with this Robin Hood type. They go to Holland, they raise an army, they invade England with an army. The people cheer for her because she's so popular, and her boyfriend rules England with her, even though he was never the king. And the last scene of Edward II, he was running through the forest like a scared rabbit, and they captured him, and you can look in the encyclopedia for what happened to him. If you go by Castle Berkeley on a moonless night, you can still hear him screaming. They didn't show a lot of mercy to each other. The women, like I say, they could be just as mean and rotten as the men could be. But everybody loved Queen Isabella until her son, who happened to be King Edward III, came along and had her arrested and had her boyfriend executed. He was having lunch at the Castle of Nottingham when he was taken in. So there again, a little bit of the Robin Hood legend kind of spills into it. And so Elizabeth I, here is this frail woman comes out to speak to her army. She's riding side saddle and all her royal frou-frou and decorations, and the men are going, oh man, what's this? This is our leader, wow. But then she gives a speech and everything changes. She says, I may be a frail woman, but I have the heart of a king, and an English king too. And oh, how they raised the rafters and cheering for her. What a magnificent person she was. My favorite English queen was Queen Boudica. Her name was mispronounced for quite a while as Boadicea, and that's where we get the word bodacious. Perfect word to describe Queen Boudica. She was one of the old Anglo-Saxon queens, and she actually sent one of the greatest generals in history in retreat, and that was Julius Caesar himself, the great Caesar. When he tried to invade England, Boudicca's soldiers were already in the water, underwater, waiting for them. And they just jumped up out of the water like porpoises. And Caesar himself had never seen anything like it. She was just furious, ferocious woman. And my favorite example is Eleanor of Aquitaine, because her name shows up in the movies you've seen, Robin Hood movies. She was one of the richest women in the world. She inherited the province of Aquitaine, which is almost like having your own country. And her court, here's an interesting one as I look at you girls lined up here. Her court was a trendsetter known for its sophistication and luxury. Eleanor's court was heavily influenced by the Spanish courts of the Moors. That's a topic, the Moors. That was the Arabs, you know. She patronized, from the Moors, from the Arabs, she learned how this graceful court of hers. And she patronized poets and encouraged the art of the troubadours. She and her court ladies would sit on an elevated platforms, just as you're sitting here, except that they would be up there, not down there, but they would be higher than everybody else in the room. And they would judge the courtiers and the troubadours as they read their poems of homage to the women and acted out proper courting techniques. The men wore fancy clothes, flowing sleeves, pointed shoes, and wore their hair long. I have an example of their poetry. It's not very good, but they looked good anyway to it. And so you could imagine the girls kind of thumbs up, thumbs down to that poet. Let's see the next one, send another one in. Be kind of an interesting event for the Robin Hood Festival, maybe. Well, Eleanor got tired of being married to King Louis VII, so she left him with two of her daughters, and she went and married Henry of Anjou. Now here's another Robin Hood movie character. He becomes, because of being married to her, he becomes King Henry II of England. And she bore him 5 sons and 3 daughters, and 2 of the sons, of course, again, Robin Hood movies, Richard I, Richard Lionheart, and John Blackman. Richard and John both became kings, and the empire was incredibly wealthy. She took 3 of her sons, including Richard and John, into rebellion against Henry. She tried to overthrow him. She didn't want him around anymore. Richard was her favorite son. Richard was spectacular. John was like, I don't know, he reminds me of Richard Nixon. It was like Kennedy and Nixon. Kennedy was spectacular. Nixon was, you know, almost, you know, and John was like that. And it was as opposite as could be. But and so there's this constant battle between them. But they were of the Plantagenet family, and the Plantagenets would always rather argue than fight. And it is a remarkable thing that when Richard died, he said, I want my brother John to replace me. That was a surprising thing to do. So they both served as king. Richard led a crusade. It was Eleanor. Again, you heard that he was captured. This is in the movies. He was captured on his way home from the crusades. Well, it was Eleanor who defended his lands against John, who was trying to take them over, just like the movies. And she helped raise the ransom and secure the release. So thanks to her, what we begin to see here actually is the need, this is the point I really want to make, is what we need is more lady historians. I would hope that maybe at least one of the girls on the court this year would say, I think that would be great. I'd like to be beautiful, but I'd like to be smart too. And I'd love to set the record straight on just how people like Eleanor work. They get so little credit from historians. And yet you can see them, like Eleanor. She's in the background, moving the pieces around. She's really the one that deserves the credit sometimes. But we always give it to the guys. So somebody, I always a good lady, there was a famous historian named Margaret Cushman who wrote my favorite book about the Robin Hood era, and she started out by joining a group very much like this one. She joined a Renaissance festival. She got some interest in it, and she wrote a book about it, and it's one of the finest books written about the Robin Hood days. So that would really set me up. That would really make my existence worthwhile if a girl from our court dedicated herself to setting the record straight and explaining just how magnificent these women were. Thank you.